relativity that mass and energy are but different manifestations of the same thing, a somewhat unfamiliar conception for the average mind. Furthermore, the equation E is equal mc squared, in which energy is thought equal to mass multiplied with the square of the velocity of light, showed that very small amount of mass may be converted into a very large amount of energy, and vice versa. The mass and energy were in fact equivalent, according to the formula mentioned above. This was demonstrated by Cochran and Walton in 1932 experimentally.
Form of a duck.
No, I don't know whether he's better known. Mickey is very well known around the world. But the duck came along as a result of too many taboos put onto Mickey Mouse. People didn't feel that Mickey could blow his top like the duck. In other words, he had to maintain a certain dignity. So in order to give ourselves a latitude, we created this little duck. This is terrible-tempered Mr. Duck.
As an outlet for yourself?
Yes, and it gave us the contrast that we needed in the film. Now, I used to team Mickey and the duck together at one time. And also, at one time, I had all four of these characters in one film at one time. Then I divided them up, and each one had his own film. Each one had his own show.
I am willing to admit that war has accomplished much in the progress of the world. I'm willing to admit that there are certain crises in the forward march of Christian civilization that perhaps could not have been met in any other way than by the sword. I'm willing to admit that war develops certain heroic traits in men and furnishes a test for the evidence of the highest character. Perhaps, too, it trains and disciplines people. But the other side of the picture justifies the prayer of every man, of every civilized man, that war should be abolished, and that the suffering, cruelty, corruption, and demoralization that follow in its train should be, as far as we can bring it about, lifted as a burden from the human race. It is our duty to take every legitimate and proper step we can to persuade the nations of the world to settle their controversies in some other way.
Красноармейцы и краснофлотцы, командиры и политработники, рабочие и работницы, колхозники и колхозницы, работники интеллигентного труда, братья и сестры в тылу наших врагов, временно подпавшие под иго немецких разбойников, наши славные партизаны и партизанки, разрушающие тылы наших врагов, от имени советского правительства и нашей большевистской партии приветствую и поздравляю вас с 24-й годовщиной Великой Октябрьской социалистической революции. Товарищи, в тяжелых условиях приходится праздновать сегодня 24-ю годовщину Октябрьской революции. Вероломные нападения немецких разбойников и навязанная нам война создали угрозу для нашей страны.
As Florence Nightingale has done this, to bear the progress 1890. When our no standard, even and memory, just and name, I hope my voice may perpetuate the great work of my life. God bless my dear old comrades of Balaclava and bring them safe to shore. Florence Nightingale. Ladies and gentlemen, I take great pleasure in introducing my latest invention, the water tortoiseshell. Although there is nothing supernatural about it, I am willing to forfeit the sum of $1,000 to anyone who can prove that it is possible to obtain air inside of the tortoiseshell when I'm locked up in it in the regulation manner after it has been filled with water. Should anything go wrong when I'm locked up, one of my assistants walks to the curtain, ready to rush in, demolishing the glass, allowing the water to flow out in order to save my life.
I took no interest in women's suffrage at all until after I was married, and my husband was in favor of women's suffrage, and I had a lot of little children, so I was not very active, but finally I was persuaded that women's suffrage was something that one needed to obtain many of the things that I already believed in, but that had not thought of at all, because I was not brought up. It sounds odd, but my mother's family was entirely outside of politics, and I was brought up by my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, and I had no particular ideas that were political at all. But I did, of course, take an interest in my uncle, Theodore Roosevelt, but it was a very distant and unpolitical interest. I knew that he was in politics, but I think I hardly would have known what it was to be either a Democrat or a Republican in those days.
Well, first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity just to express my deep gratitude to the English people for their wonderful, affectionate, loving, and marvelous welcome they've given me, coming back to my hometown, as it were. And I want to take this occasion just to tell you how much I appreciate it. I know there's been a little remiss in some of the mail and so forth. We've been inundated with mail. We've had sacks and sacks and sacks of it. And it's very difficult to answer it all at once. But sooner or later, I hope that I'll be able to answer every one of them.
What changes do you notice from the London you knew before, Mr. Chaplin?
Oh, there's many changes. Of course, my feelings, as you say, Miss Powell, were one of excitement, frustration, bewilderment, a little sadness, and a great deal of gladness, of course. Of course, London, one thinks of London as being very staid and very calm and so forth. But there's an excitement underneath, a vitality which really lifts one off its feet. And I felt that. I see lots of changes. Naturally, I was shocked when I saw Waterloo Bridge, that beautiful, slick, modern, very fine utility bridge. But I prefer the old Waterloo Bridge, you know, with it was a noble structure. And then, there, I'm getting sentimental, I suppose. I suppose it's a case of we can't stand still. No, nothing is permanent, not even trouble.
I am one of the children of the people. I was brought up amongst them, and I know their trials and their troubles. I therefore determined in framing the budget to add nothing to the anxieties of their lot, but to do something towards lightening those they already bear with such patience and fortitude. No necessity of life will be dearer or more difficult to get owing to the budget. On the other hand, out of the money raised by taxing superfluity, funds will be established to secure honorable sustenance for the deserving old, and to assist our great benefit societies in making adequate provision for sickness and infirmity, and against the poverty which comes to the widows and orphans of those who fall in the battle of industry. This is the plan, this the purpose of the government. We mean to achieve these aims, whoever stands in the way. David Lloyd George.